Buenos Dias Gunners Collective. Back at it? You already know. Motherfucking smack at it, right? And as you can tell by today's thumbnail, in a menudo style and direct fashion, we're going to talk about some stuff. Oh, yes, indeed. I'm going to write graffiti all over. We're going to write it all over the damn bus. Let's talk about Fresno Bulldogs, right? And I know we've touched on the Fresno Bulldog situation. We've talked extensively about the perros, the perro chatos, whatever you want to call them, the Fresno primos, the Bulldogs, whatever the case may be, man. But I have a couple stories I wanted to get into. And I wanted to touch and elaborate on the Fresno Bulldogs, right? And something that's kind of current and something that goes back to the past. Orderly, we're going back to the future, right? And trip out. We're going to talk about it. Now, when it comes to the Fresno Bulldogs, there's always a lot of misconceptions and always a lot of questions that get asked to the gun. You know, hey, gun, how were the Bulldogs able to sustain for so long being independent? Hey, weren't Bulldogs the first dropouts of the Norte? Hey, weren't Bulldogs fucking righteously the biggest carro there ever was for the Norte? Wasn't the F-14ers the real Del Homes? They put it down. And I'm going to tell you, indubitably, I'm going to answer all those questions right here, right now. Let's get down to it. Now, the Fresno Bulldogs, the F-14ers originally, right? Yes, indeed. Probably the largest car ever within the Northern Collective, right? As Norteños, the Bulldogs were righteous, man. They were a righteous group. And this is even before Bulldogs. Before they came up with the name Bulldogs, they derived it from the Fresno State University and took it and ran with it and became, canines and all that. So let's watch out. Let's put a muzzle on them for a minute and arf. And in this fashion, I'm going to tell you what happened. So the F-14ers were mobbing, steady mobbing within the collective. They had a lot of high-ranking members, man, a lot of high-ranking guys from Fresno, Crackers Vindiola, amongst many others that were Nuestra Familia members, okay? Made members, made mobsters, doing their thing, very influential in the cause, very influential in the structure of the Norte, very, very influential and a lot of things, And quiet as it's kept, I know a lot of vatos hate on Fresno. That's just the truth, man. Hey, that's to state facts. That's the fact of the matter. That's precise in the thinking. People are like, you know what? I don't care about no perros, man. They ain't part of us. Well, chale, let's talk about it, right? See, because being one of the largest carros in California, Northern California specifically, they held their own, man. They held their own, and I myself can tell you, based on a true story, on facts, man, them Fresno boys has always been about the wiggle. Their sizzle was like Sizzler, steaks are bomb. They're always about their wigglization, even back then, man, as F-14ers back in the old days, I'm talking about 70s and 80s, I've heard stories as I was indoctrinated and educated into the plight of the gente, about Fresno boys. They always were the largest car. They always were with the business. They always had some type of friction or animosity going on with the city of San Juan. They always were doing this and always doing that. But the fact remains, man, that they stood 10 toes down or 10 paws down, whatever you want to call it, and handled their business. Okay, now, of course, somewhere along the lines, tension arose. Okay, and I've talked about it. Tension arose, and the Bulldogs said, nah, we ain't having that, man. The F-14ers said, we ain't having that. We're going to do our own thing. They felt that Fresno was a big enough carro to go on their own. And, of course, Nuestra Familia, Norteños alike said, chale, that shit ain't going to work out for you. We'll see how it works out for you without the big boys, right? Well, guess what? 35, 40 years later, it's still working out. And if anything, I think it worked out in their favor. And I'm going to tell you why. This carro broke off, but you got to understand, being indoctrinated as Norteños, knowing how the Northerners wiggled, to now make yourself an enemy of the exact cause that you were with. It's kind of like Gruden going to Tampa Bay from the Raiders, right? He already knew the game plan, He already knew what players were about what, who was fucking no good, who retained water, he knew all the intricacies and the plots and plans and the inner details and the inner workings into that organization. And so he went over there and said, watch out. He got him a big old ring, Super Bowl bound. And that's the same thing that happened within the Fresno collective, the F-14 Bulldogs, right? When they broke off for the Norteños, and there's always going to be several different spills, several different stories as to who, why, when, where, what, how they did this, right? Fact remains, red wave happened. These vatos broke off. They said, we are no longer part of the Nuestra Familia. We are no longer part of Norteños Collective. We are not Northerners, period. We are just Fresno Bulldogs. And they said, argh, and they bounced, right? and they got on that leash and walked away. Now, trip out. Of course, there was some bite back for that. Oh yeah, you're not just gonna walk away a carro that big and expect the norteños hands down just to let that happen. Of course, man, there was a lot of warring going on, a lot of getting mixed up, and a lot of different situations, right? They became top priority for the Nuestra Familia. They became top priority for the norteños. I remember when it happened, late 92, 93. We were down south in Nellis, Fred C. Nellis, CYA. The mobilization was real. I thought it was all that plus a bag of chips. You know what I mean? I was hitting people with 4 pieces plus sodas. Orale. And they did it. Oh, they done went and did it, man. Just out of the blue, we got handed a wheeler that said we are no longer part of you guys. And we also got a tiger uppercut on the way out. Vatos got off. They chose to do what they felt was right for their organization, and you can't take nothing from them. If anything, Holmes, you look at them and say, maybe they seen the future, Holmes. Maybe they seen what was going to happen, Holmes. They seen the ship sinking. Okay, now the ship never sunk, quite contrary to what a lot of people believe, but they seen the flux capacitor was not working, right? So they dipped off. They decided as a city, as a gang, as an organization, that they were going to hold their own, and they did, bro. I remember the warring was real. We were hearing about things in the Pinta, the penitentiary going on. Us and YA, we were handling our business. It was a back and forth situation, you know. It wasn't like these dudes were suckers all of a sudden, or they just woke up and forgot how to fight, right? If anything, like I've said before in different spills, man, these vatos from Fresno, I don't know what's in the water. I don't know what's in that sopita that they had, what kind of magic fucking fairy dust they got put in that sopita, but these vatos had hands. They knew how to fight. These Fresno Bulldogs were about their business. Their bark, a lot of times, is much more vicious than their bite, right? So they handled it. They handled their business. They would get off, and it was likewise, man. It was going back and forth. Of course, the Sureños got in the mix sometimes, and they were handling their business. Basically, the Bulldogs were against the grain with everyone. Now, of course, there were certain instances where the Bulldogs did, at one point in time, click up with the Sureños because they had a common enemy, and then they would go on yardas and click up with Norteños against Sureños. It just depended upon where they were at. They utilized that tool, that manipulation tactic of, Sosuke, we're not that deep, so we're going to get in where we fit in, right? And righteously so, they were able to do that because there was no solid structure. There's never been a core structure there where they have homeboys telling them what to do. They're basically a renegade group that can go ahead and do whatever the fuck they want to. You know what I mean? If they want to bark, they're going to bark. If they want to bite, Sasuke, they're going to bite, right? It just depends on how you bite back. Now, so the Fresno Bulldogs were doing their thing. You know, and as the 90s progressed, man, everyone started to catch wind. Everyone started to recognize and finally realize that they were no longer Norteños. That's not what it was. You know, you would go into the city of Fresno and you were starting to see the Huelga bird fade out. You were starting to see the F-14s go away. And some of the old school Bulldogs still rock the F-14. Man, I've seen vatos from Calwa, vatos from Bond that still rock the F-14. You know, they're old school. They got it on it, man. They said it had a different meaning to it. Whatever the case may be, this is where they were at with it. I met a lot of good Bulldogs over the years that are they're good friends of mine, you know, to this day. And I never denied them of their status of what they were doing, man. I always said, man, you motherfuckers was wiggling, bro. You guys were about your shit. And they said likewise, bro. You know, they didn't take nothing away from the Norteños. It just was that it was going to be on the funk. If it's on, then it's on, G. And in that fashion, you know, and that's how they rolled. Now, quite contrary to what a lot of people believe, they consider them a dropout gang. Okay? And it just depends on the way you look at it. Okay? I myself never looked at it that way. Because when they defected from the Norte, when they defected from the NF, there was no such word as drop out or drop in or fucking drop that way or Sosuke, hey, fucking do drops. There was none of that. What it was, bro, was basically they were no longer part of the organization. They expelled themselves from that organization. They excluded themselves from what was going on here, right? So now years pass by and this word dropout becomes prevalent and people are speaking it and saying it without knowing what the fuck it means. And of course, in a way you could see where, okay, this could be considered a dropout gang. But they never carried themselves like a degenerate faction. They never controlled their thinking or their ways like, say, the Northern Riders or group factions like that. This wasn't the way the dogs rolled. They were active and they functioned. You understand what I'm saying? The Bulldogs were, Sasuke, we're Bulldogs now. We're no longer part of the North. We're going to do our thing. Sort of like Maravilla when they took a stance against the M. Sort of like when 18 took their stance. These gangs get so big, these organizations, that they tend to break off. Now, of course, I'm not going to speak on Maravilla 18 saying what happened, how they got back in the fold, if they did or didn't. That's nothing for me to speak on. I would just say when it comes to the Perros, me having an extensive, timeline that goes way back with them and knowing a lot of them, I will say that, man, they just chose to go their own route. They chose to go their own way. And after 35 plus years, they're still rocking, bro. They are still rocking, right? Of course, it's a little bit of disarray, man. It's a little bit disorganized from what I hear from a lot of old school perros. They're like, they don't like the situation or the way that it's going, trending with the youngsters. Now, more gravitating towards the urban type style, but that's happening everywhere, man. I told them that's happening up north. That's even happening down south. Things that we never saw, we'd say, the N-word's becoming prevalent in a lot of neighborhoods and barrios where it wasn't once spoken or wasn't once, adhered to. But it's being said, and the same thing's happening with the Fresno Bulldogs and them being a little bit more independent, a little bit more wild, a little bit more able to do whatever the hell they want to do. Of course, it's kind of rampant over there. Right? But I'm not going to hate on the Vatos. No, not me. Not 4-0. I beat the booch down with the 2x4. Right? I'm not going to do it. And I'm going to tell you why I'm not going to do it. Because I give them a lot of respect. You have to respect any organization that chose to go against the grain on these big organizations and are still here to rock today. Okay? A lot of people hate and say, you know what? Nah, they're no good, homes. Them fools can't even walk you out of those. Well, let me tell you. Okay? They're on a lot of yards, homes. Active yards. Administration's not dumb. So administration is not going to put them on an NF stronghold yard or an MS stronghold yard because you already know what time it is. There's not enough Bulldogs in the world to hit those yardas. You know what I mean? And of course, it wouldn't be quite easy. It wouldn't be like they'd hit the yards and start, that wouldn't happen. There'd be a lot of and a lot of Huelga birds flying and a lot of fucking MS biting snake. It would be going down, right? It would be a righteous war. See, the Nuestra Familia and the M, I think, respects the Bulldogs. They can't stand the Vatos, but they respect them. They righteously respect their get down. They righteously respect the way they've held their own over the years. And they know that they're an up-to-par adversary. Okay, where I thought, okay, when the Bulldogs broke off, eventually they're going to fade off. They're not going to be about it. They're going to forget the indoctrination and the tools that the Norteños utilized to become righteous soldados, right? The way that we worked out, the mental aspects of everything being up to par, the education part of it. But quietly as it's kept, they maintained. They took all the good parts of everything that they've ever learned and utilized them tools, which was the righteous thing to do. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? And this is what they tended to do. Now, of course, over the years, people felt some type of way. I remember in my neighborhood, man, there was a couple Bulldogs that would come around from Fresno. They had brothers that were actually Norteños. And of course, if we seen them, off with their head. We were trying to cut their tails off. But at the same time, man, they knew enough to just get in and get out, right? But we never underestimated them because we always knew, man, that these Vatos had in paws. They were with the business. Hey, Gun, you always show love to the Perros. I always show love to everyone, man. At the end of the day, man, real recognizes real, game recognizes game, and respect is given to the gente that deserve it. And this organization as a whole deserves it, okay? All the way back from the veteranos that were F-14ers affiliated with the Nuestra Familia and part of that organization, all the way to the Perros now that are rapping like, hey, today I got time, cat. Whatever they're doing, they've gravitated towards what they've gravitated towards, but they've always maintained that name. Now, when this into hostilities took place between the North and the South, or the M and the NF, or whatever the case may be in these other group factions, the Bulldogs were also approached, and this is coming from one Mr., you already know who he is, man, Mr. Galvin, right? Phantom, the Fresno, told me personally, yes, we were approached, but we weren't with adhering to certain aspects of that peace treaty, right? It's not that the Vatos think they're better than anyone else. It's that the Vatos, they're untrusting of different group organizations. They're going to wiggle how they want to wiggle, okay? They can't participate, according to him, with any type of dealings with the K9, where I know the Norteños, the Nuestra Familia, as well as the Emmet, don't as well, right, adhere to that. But of course, the Bulldogs felt that in this situation with this end to hostilities, it was going to put their group faction, it was going to jeopardize basically the safety and security of their gente. And so scared they weren't trying to do that, humps. You know what I mean? So es que no, we won't even sacrifice a burro, vato, órale, let alone a perro, right? A dog. And that's just the way it was. So they chose to be the only group organization that stood firm in their stance against that. Now let's talk about that, right? Because what you have is this end to hostilities going on, man. And I think it's one of the most righteous thing that's ever happened for a raza, period. You know, never thought I'd see it. I see it. I believe it. It's real. It's progressing. Hopefully it stays that way with all this inner turmoil with the NF going on. I just hope it stays that way, right? And I know a lot of gente from down south agree and believe in the same righteousness of it. The end goal is total unity for the raza, right? But Trip, at the end of the day, the Bulldogs said, no, not me. They did the Matumbo. They said no, right? Reason being that they know that there's a lot of animosity, a lot of history with these group factions, and maybe they felt that if it defeated the purpose of what they believe in, right? Maybe they felt that if they hit these yardas, these guys would get eradicated, you know? Because if your soldados on the yard get eradicated, then that leaks onto the streets and it makes the streets more vulnerable. Everything is ran from the pintas. And of course, I know that these bulldog gangs are independent. A lot of them are cliques, street gangs, or whatever the case may be. So they're independent of the pinta. But at the same time, man, you get your clecha from the vatos that got it. Vatos that have been doing it for a long time, right? You know, and I talk to a lot of younger bulldogs, man. I talk to a lot of older ones. I talk to a lot that are my age, right? And we all, at the end of the day, have some type of common understanding and common belief. And the common belief is to each their own. What the Perros did, that's on them. But to think about it, every other group faction, the Woods, the Africanos, the North, the South, all agreed to ease tensions, to end hostilities for the betterment of the people, right? Whereas the Bulldogs said, chale, Holmes, if you throw us on the yardas, melee time, right? They were down with the melee. And it's not because they think they're harder than anyone. It's not because they think it's self-preservation. They've preserved themselves for this long doing what they do. You can't take it from the vatos. Obviously, something's going on, right? Within that group segment, right? But I wanted to touch on it because now what you have going on, right, is a lot of questions that are being asked. Gun, what about the feds? I heard the federals are rolling with the NF and the feds. In some places they are, right? If they have not shed northern blood, if they have not shed the blood of the brother, man, then they are allowed to be embraced. And being embraced means that they program under the set rules, the regulations, and the mandates of the Norte, and they roll with it. Now, of course, there's some things that I'm sure they're not privy to, something, or they might be embraced within the household and they just activate their function. You feel me? I can't call it like an alcoholic. I haven't been to the feds. I don't know what's really going on nowadays. Excuse me. But at the same time, you know, I'm getting asked these questions. A lot of younger bulldogs that have never been back in that war, back in that mix, as far as in prison, the shit we went through when the breakoff happened, they're saying, no, we could never program with them vatos. We could never do that. That's frivolous. That's lies. That's propaganda. That's drama. And I'm here to tell you, nope, 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 and no, right? It's the truth. It's facts, Holmes. It's facts. And your people, I'm talking to the Bulldogs right now, your gente, your people have always utilized that tactic, Holmes, of adapting to their surroundings. You know, because I could tell you, Holmes, first and foremost, and I hate to repeat myself, but I'm telling you, Holmes, when I was in YA, they were wiggling with Sureños. Then in some places, they were wiggling with Norteños. That's just the way it was, bro. And we were not dumb to the fact that we knew that they were utilizing and the embracement was real, but there was certain gente that were right there in certain positions, man, that felt it for no other reason. It was cool to keep them fucking close. That way, if we had to chop their paws off, so I was scared nails were getting clipped, period, right? And that's what that was all about. There was never like thinking, oh, the Bulldogs are getting over. We're getting over on these Norteños. You have to don't know what's up. Oh, we knew what was up, right? Believe me, it's always cool to keep your enemies close. Just the way it is, man. That old saying is real talk. But I give respect and I give an admonishment and a lot of love for the Perros just based on, man, what other group faction has prospered and held their own just like this besides anyone's that's at dictation of different fucking big homies, right? These ones don't got big homies. They don't got none of that, man. They're just out there just wiggling, wilding out, hyphy, right? You know, I've been to Fresno, man. Fresno is a treacherous place, man, where a lot of crime takes place and they're always pointing... The Bulldogs did it, right? They're always pointing fingers at the dogs, man, because they're the predominant group. Okay, let's look at that. Of course, there's Fresno Norteños that are there. Bulldogs get in my DM. No, there isn't. Yes, there is. There's Sureños in the surrounding counties and the areas, man, as well as some parts of Fresno. Yep, sure is. Don't lie, right? But at the same time, they're not the prominent group. We all know, man, the prominent group are these Fresno Bulldogs, right? But what's been spoken to me, I've seen it. People are telling it to me. They're starting to see these F-14s spring up again. Now, I don't know, perros, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've noticed in a couple flicas, a couple things ever since this embracement within the federal faction of the NF with some of these perros, I'm starting to notice F-14s pop up a little bit more. Maybe it's the calming understanding coming back. Maybe it's the vatos that want to get back into the fold coming back into the fold, or maybe it's just something totally different. I don't know. Enlighten me, because I'm unenlightened at this point. Anyways, I just wanted to touch on this, man. I give a lot of respect to a lot of the old school perros that put it down, man. Shout out to my boy Dreamer de Corco. Shout out to K9 de Fresno Bulldog. Shout out to Bubba de the north side. Shout out to Joey Boy de the east side. Short de the east side. Danny Boy from the east side. All them real ones, man, that wiggled for their people and their cause. Crackers, you know what I mean? Just old school ones. Sammy Venegas, you know. Maybe not him, but you know what I'm saying, right? At the end of the day, shout out to all the real Aguilar, Cisco, Rooster, Little Inez, rest in peace. Real perros that really deserve some respect. Put some respect on their name, because these are the guys, man, that paved the way for the dogs to do what they do now. You know what I mean? And that's just what it is. Anyways, at the end of the day, I just wanted to retouch on this situation because, you know, if you look at it from the outside looking in, and not a lot of people know about the Bulldog plight. Not a lot of people know what they went through. But I'm going to tell you, them wars were real. Them wars were pretty much more realer than the wars we were having with the Sureños. Yeah, we got off with the Southsiders and Sureños. Don't even trip, man. That happened, right? But with the Bulldogs, it was just a little bit more personal. It was a little bit more vicious. I myself got hit by a bulldog, right? A couple of them. And it was all business. Nothing personal. I understood they were doing what they had to do. And I got mines too. I had to get off, and then that's just what it is, man. That's water under the bridge. It's nothing but love and respect. Even vatos that hit me, I could say, you know what? Hey, it was all business, humps. It was part of being a youngster and part of the wiggle and part of what we were indoctrinated with at that time and told that we had to do. And without even being told, we just knew what time it was. And that's just what it was. Real recognizes real. At the end of the day, man, I hope that you move fast with a purpose. I hope that you guys get everything that you want coming to you. Remember, man, it's all about uniting the raza perros. If you want to get in, it's like, no, we don't want to get in. Well, then don't fucking get in, McGruff. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, we're going to wiggle. North, south, east, west, everyone in between. You already know what it is. The gun. Saw a raza thing. Bang, bang.